Beyond the Block Party. I'm your host, Joyce Conroy. We are back on Ernie's Corner, and Ernie Cefalu has a very intriguing story. I've been thinking about this when he was telling me that there is a correlation between Isaac Hayes, his great LP Black Moses, and Jesus Christ Superstar. Ernie, got to let us in on that one.
Well, it's really funny because it's never really been talked about. Nobody really knows it except me and maybe a couple other people like Jim Doyle and some of the other people that I've talked to about it, Ivor. But it's never really been put out there. And I put these as we did the Free to Pain album Contact a couple of weeks ago. It started me thinking and how the construction of that package won the day for Craig Braun and for Invictus Records and sort of solidified that whole thing. When I first got the assignment for Jesus Christ Superstar with Bill Levy at Decca Records, we had that shootout. I got it. It was with this logo, the Angels, and the Jesus Christ Superstar. So, and I think I have right here. Let me jump to this. This was the other agency's presentation. They wanted to get rid of Jesus Christ and just use Superstar. They were going to try and convince Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber because of the, I don't know, the religious connotations and could turn people off and it's almost sacrilegious. And so, but they did this image of like this line drawing of a guy that looked like Moses. And I didn't want to use Jesus, the image of Jesus. I didn't want to do a whole lot of religious looking things, but for me, angels were always part of everything. And as you can see over here, this was in a National Geographic that when I was working on this, I had one angel. I decided I was going to use an angel because everybody can relate to angels, whether you believe in Jesus or not, or Buddha, whatever. There are there's supernatural forces that are around you. In the Catholicism, it's angels. In a lot of other, religions, it's angels as well, guardian angels. And so I went off on that direction rather than trying to duplicate, what Christ may look like. Because the other thing is that, was Christ black? Was he white? Was he Asian? Was he, all these different religions have a very similar, icon that they look to. And, they're all different races. So, I mean, that's another thing that you get into, aside from being Jesus Christ, using that, it's almost really kind of a no-win situation. So I went off on the angel directions. And I had already worked on this one. And when I was looking through a bunch of magazines, I saw this image. And to me, that looks just like, and that's a sunset in like Czechoslovakia or someplace. And a friend, a Rab on Facebook, sent me this picture. And I hadn't seen it in probably 40 years. I was thumbing through a National Geographic, saw that, and then sort of put it together with, well, let's just flip this one angel and make it look like that, and so that's kind of what I did, and this was the inspiration. But going back to this, so when I got the assignment, Bill Levy said, okay, and there was a rumor that it was going to be 3 records. It was going to be a 3-record set. And so I started right away on, what I had showed him and what he bought off on and Decca bought off on and Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber bought off on was the Angels and this look. So I needed to do a construction that would accommodate 3 records and have some kind of relationship to Jesus Christ Superstar. And I'm going to just jump around because I'm going to show you the progression of the package that I started to do. Okay. So now I know that this is going to be the logo. It's going to be called Jesus Christ Superstar. And if you notice, I put the Decca logo in the middle and a rock opera underneath it, and on a black background. And so when Bill said, okay, this is going to be it, and it's going to be 3 records, there's a rumor that it's going to be 3 records, I went back and started working on an album construction, a board construction that could accommodate 3 albums. So I'm going to take you quickly through the process of what I came up with. So again, and what ended up happening is I started doing this comp. Within a few days, Bill reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got some news on the album. It's going to be 2 records. I know you're working on stuff. Bring it over and let's talk about it." So I'm going to briefly go through. So this was the Jesus Christ Superstar album cover. This was the Black Moses cover. But I'm going to go through. This was the first. This was going to be the first panel. It was going to be wood. I didn't finish it. The angels were going to be above, and then there was going to be those initials that are above the crucifix that Christ died on was going to be in there, and with this wood grain rendering that I did of wood. And I was a real wood guy because the Jefferson Airplane album, I rendered the wood for that for the Long John Silver cigar box. But so that's the first looking at the cover, and it would again have the angels and this here, and probably say, Jesus Christ Superstar somewhere on it. And so this was the second one. So it went from this to you open it up, the top lifts up, and there's our angels and stuff. And here's one of the other panels that folds out. It also had a pocket for the record. Okay. And then it goes from that to this. Okay. So as it's folding out, as you see over here, that panel that had the nail in it now is open, and it's got lyrics and credits and stuff. This is the next panel that folds out the other way. So now you have these 2 end flaps and 3 panels below, going vertically and 3 horizontally to make it and then so you've got 3 albums here in this three albums across, and then this panel, and this was lyrics and credits. There was no talk about a libretto yet. I needed to accommodate all the credits, all the lyrics. I mean, there was a lot of stuff, and this looks it looks small, but in reality it's 12 3/8 by 12 inches, so you can get a lot of copy and lyrics and stuff on these panels. So then there was one more panel that folded down, and you see it over here. So now it's 4 panels vertically and 3 panels across. So it actually makes a cross.
That's what I noticed the cross right away.
Like this.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's how it looked on one side. And there would be photos and stuff here as the panels. I didn't get a chance to finish it. It was just a few days after I got the assignment, and I went back right away and started thinking, how can I accommodate 3 records and, make it relevant? So there would have been pictures on this that you didn't see, when it's closed, but you start to reveal it as the thing opens up like this. Okay. And then this was and then this. Oh, wait, that's something different. There's this. Okay. And where is the connection between Jesus Christ Superstar, the original idea, and Black Moses? Well, we're going to back up here for a minute and go back over here. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the Free to Paint album, it turned out that it was a shootout between Craig Braun, AGI out of Chicago, that was a printer printing on board, and in a company called Bertco in LA that just printed paper. So coming up with that board package, because Bill had said, okay, we need to figure out a way to accommodate 2 albums without all the construction and stuff. So he suggested that we do a box. Let's put it in a box. And that's what it ended up being, was in that box. And you can sort of see that right here. So that's what's here. This is the box. There's the records that had the angels on the labels. And this is the libretto that came inside the box with the record, and with the vinyl. And so as I moved toward that, so I went over to Decca, brought the idea that you had seen, which was, this piece here and how that worked. And Bill loved it, but it was too much. And it was only going to be 2 records now. And so we had to rethink what we were going to do. And that's where we came up with this box over here. Let's see, let me find that again. It's right here. No, that's not it. It's right here. There it is. So the cross idea kind of went away, went on the back shelf. Okay, we were talking about the Free to Paint album. There was a company called AGI. They were out of Chicago. They were a printer. They were a real competitor to Ivy Hill, who Craig was aligned with, and Pacific Eye and Ear became aligned with after we left Craig. because, like I said before, record companies weren't buying packaging from printers. They were buying it from brokers. Greg Braun was a broker. AGI was a printer. So what that did, if they went with AGI, that would save them money because they wouldn't have to pay a fee, a percentage to a broker, because a broker doesn't do it for free. He buys it from the printer, marks it up, and sells it to the record company. So there was actually a big advantage for AGI to get in. Turns out I met their AGI was owned by Jim Ladwick and Dick Block. Those two guys owned it. I had met Dick in Bill Levy's office, in his waiting room, because Dick was he was very aggressive, and he was really after Bill Levy to give him work at for AGI. And actually, Bill didn't like him, but he was a real pain in the butt. So he'd give him little things to just sort of get him out of his waiting room and stuff. He was very almost too aggressive, very pushy. And so, and he and I had laughed about it, talked about it. Anyway, I had met Dick Block. We ended up getting the Free to Paint album away from him. We ended up getting this package away from him. Again, totally because of the constructions that we created for both those albums, and especially this album. This one was a big one. They really wanted it. There were a lot of people that wanted it. Bill really took me under his wing, and AGI didn't get the printing, through Norman Levitt. I was working at Norman Levitt when we did this, and Ivy Hill printed it. I didn't even know who Ivy Hill was, but they printed this package when I was working at Norman. I came to find out who they were when I left Norman Levitt and went to Craig Braun, because Craig had formed an alliance with him. Because Craig was smart. He saw that the industry was going more, because the musicians had control. They could decide who was going to do everything. All he had to do was make friends with sometimes the group, but more often with the record companies, people that are buying this stuff, the creative directors, the art directors, the guys in purchasing. So that's really where Craig was most comfortable and would get the orders. And I experienced that kind of thing when I worked for Nestle. I worked for Nestle for 30 years. They bought from brokers who sold them printing. So it was kind of a repeat of the same thing. But record companies ended up eventually getting rid of brokers and buying printing companies themselves. All the majors had printing companies that they kept it all internal. Anyway, I came out to California with Craig and Tony Gerboy, who ended up being my partner, who was his vice president, to start the satellite office for Craig Braun in Los Angeles. Dick Block had also come out with Jim Ladwick. They were trying to establish a presence in Los Angeles as well, because that was the heart of the record companies. That's where the companies were. The music may have been coming from San Francisco and Northern California, but the decisions were being made in Los Angeles. So, and by now, a lot of the big companies already had a presence out here. And even if they did, it would be much more convenient to do it here than back east. And everybody was moving here. Not only the creative people, but the record companies were moving here as well, because it was so much easier to do business and cheaper, and the weather was better. So what ended up happening was Dick Block came out with Jim Ladwick. And so we're competing with stuff for Craig. I'm working at Craig's. And Dick reached out to me. Turned out that Dick was my neighbor behind us. We lived in Park Slope. And around the corner where we have 2nd Street and 7th Avenue in Park Slope, around the corner, there were other buildings, and Dick lived right behind us on the next block over. And so we ended up, he'd come by, we'd talk, he'd hang out, we'd party a little bit. Nice guy. And when he was out there, when he would come by, I would share stuff with him. And I showed him this construction for Jesus Christ Superstar that was rejected. We started talking about Superstar and how great it ended up being, and how good I was and all that stuff. He was really smearing me with compliments. But I showed him this package. So months go by. I'm out now in California. He's coming out to California. And I see this. I did the Jesus Christ Superstar album in 1970. In 1971, at the end of 71, the Black Moses album came out. And I was still in New York, and I saw this construction. It was the same exact construction that I had done for Jesus Christ Superstar. And then I remember I showed it to him. He ripped me off. So
Oh no.
I went around the corner to his house and said, "Hey, I just saw this Black Moses album, and it's the exact construction that I showed you that was going to be the first. It was the first comp that I put together for Jesus Christ Superstar. You ripped me off." And he said, "No, I didn't rip you off. I owe you one." And I said, "What do you mean? I owe you one. I mean, you didn't use it. What else was it going to be used for?" And I had this opportunity to do this Black Moses album and print it. Okay, this was a great construction. It was even more expensive than the box that we ended up putting the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff in. It was a major construction. And he ripped me off completely. And I didn't even think about it when I was showing to him. So I owe you one. Okay, so a couple of months go by. I'm now out in Los Angeles working with Craig, setting up the office of Tony, his vice president, and we're working on stuff. I'm working on the Alice Cooper Schools Out comp, sharing that with Alive, the Cheech and Chong Big Bamboo album cover that we were sharing with Lou Adler and Cheech and Chong. And he calls me one day. "Hey, Ernie, it's Dick Block. I'm out here in LA. And Jim's with me, and we'd love to get together with you." And I'm like,
Oh
"Okay."
no.
Okay, yeah, here I go again, but I don't forget. I'm Italian, okay? I don't forget. And so I agreed to have lunch with them. Now, remember, I'm setting up Craig's office. We're working on these projects because the promises that were made to Tony and I never happened for work and stuff from A&M, a few other companies that work was promised from by Craig. That never materialized, but I had made these comps in California for Alice Cooper and Cheech and Chong. So we're working. We got those packages. So we're working on them. And so I meet Dick and Jim at a very high-end restaurant in Los Angeles, actually in Beverly Hills, and so we're there, and I'm talking. They're asking, well, how I'm doing. Am I happy out here in California? And I grew up in California, so yeah, I'm like a fish back in water. But I really miss New York. I miss the activity. I miss the energy, and so we're talking, and they're telling me about how they want to set up an office here. They're going to do it in the Larchmont area, which was kind of like Rodeo Drive here in the desert or Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. Piedmont area Larchmont was really a high-end area, and they had leased this three-story Victorian house, and how they're all excited about doing this. And in the meantime, while they're talking, I'm looking at the menu, and I'm going to order the most expensive thing on the menu. Okay. And I did. And I ordered, and I did. It was a tomahawk steak or whatever it was. It was big, and with a salad and dessert. And we had a bottle of wine, so I did it up. I'm at lunch, and they're paying for it.
And that's
Okay.
your reciprocation.
Yeah, so then they start telling me about how they're doing this, and they'd like to see if I would be interested in going to work for them. I'm out here for Craig Braun. They knew I had an agreement to go back to New York. I was only out in LA for 3 months. I was supposed to get work, set up an art department, that I was going back to New York to be the creative director that I was at Craig Braun in New York. And so I had shared all that with them. And again, they were asking me what I was working on. And I basically said, we've got I didn't tell them it was Alice Cooper. I didn't tell them it was Cheech and Chong. I didn't want to run into another one of these situations.
Yeah.
So they said, well, we need a creative director out here. We've rented a space. It's beautiful. And we really need a creative director to set up an art department. It's basically the same thing you're doing for Greg. And, we really love your work. We think you're great. All the schmearing came along as I ordered the most expensive dessert, on the menu. And if I could have ordered stuff to go, I would have ordered that too, but I didn't. So I'm saying, and by this time, Tony and I are pretty much, both of us were going to leave Craig Braun. He was going to go back to New York. I was going to go to work for somebody else, like maybe AGI. I didn't even think about AGI. I was thinking maybe I'd go to a record company and try and be a creative director in their art department, because people knew who we were, people knew who I was because of what I had done. And so that's what our thinking was. We knew that we were going to go separate directions. But one of the things that Tony and I had been able to accomplish was a camaraderie and a friendship, because we were both, you know, thrown out of the fishbowl onto the ground and said, okay, survive. And that's what we're doing. And so we had to bond. We had to come together. I shared those comps with him that he had never seen for Cheech and Chong and Alice Cooper. He sold them. So we thought, wow, this is really great. I mean, he's what I've been looking for, and I'm what he's been looking for. He's 10 years older than me, but it didn't matter. The guy was an amazing salesman. He could sell ice cubes to Eskimos, no problem. He was good looking. He was smart. He graduated college at 16, an incredible salesman and very smart. And so, it was almost like a marriage made in heaven. And we never really thought about, doing something together. But what ended up happening was, he and I were bonding more and more. A couple days go by since I had this lunch, and Dick Block calls me. Hey man, how's it going? We were wondering if Jim and I were wondering if you had given any more thought to, our, offer of being a creative director. There's a great salary. There's all these benefits you're going to get. I want to take you by the facility that we rented in Larchmont to show you what it looks like. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't we go to dinner? And then you can take me by. Oh, okay. That was really free. Let's go to dinner. So again, I went to the most expensive steakhouse in Beverly Hills. Okay. Again, ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, and, all the accoutrements that go with it. So after that great dinner and dessert, he takes me to the building that they leased in Larchmont. I mean, it was really cool. It reminded me a lot of the Jefferson Airplane house for Grunt Records in Haight-Ashbury. It was a Victorian house with all the gingerbread. And then we went inside. It was 3 stories, and, showed me what my office where it would be, and, in the art department and all that stuff. And I said, and he's saying, do you think that you could, give us an answer? And I said, well, I'm very disappointed at Craig Braun, and I'm thinking about going to work for a record company, because that seemed to be the right way for me to go, because by this time I realized that my career was going to be music. And so he said, well, Jim and I would really like to have you join us and create an art department for us. You'd have total autonomy. You can do whatever you want. You can hire the people that you want. It was a great offer. And the financial piece of it was big. I mean, it was big. More, two times what Craig was paying me. And by this time I'm making a lot of money, because I lied when I joined Norman Levitt and said I needed more money, thinking that I wasn't going to hire me. He ended up hiring me. So now I'm making this money. Now I'm making even more with Craig, and now I'm going to have a chance to do even more. So I could make all this money and not even have to go back to New York. I mean, that was pretty good. And Bonnie was okay with New York, but she was born and raised out here in California. So we both felt, firmly solid here in Los Angeles. And so, well, I said, well, let me think about it. It sounds really good. I love everything that you guys are saying. Give me a couple of more days to think about it, and I'll give you an answer. I said, okay. And so in between that dinner and Tony and I leaving Craig Braun, we realized that what we had together was exactly what was needed. Okay, we didn't really need anybody else. We could do, the two of us could do it. We each put in $2,500, and we started Pacific Pioneer. This is, right. We had a meeting. Each one of us had a meeting with Craig. And it was like an update on everything, what's going on and all that stuff. And I had the first meeting with him, and I told him that I was fed up with him and the promises that were made and never kept and all the rest of it. And I was leaving. And he didn't seem to be bothered, because what I came to find out was he had already hired Tom Wilkes, to run the Los Angeles, because the plan was I set up this art department, then I go back to New York where there was no creative director. I was still overseeing what was going on there, but doing out here in Los Angeles. So he had already gone ahead and hired Tom Wilkes, who, with Barry Feinstein, the photographer, started a company called Camouflage Productions. And they did the Pearl album. They did a Class Clown for George Carlin. They did, a Jackson Browne cover. All their covers looked the same. It was always with this blue backdrop and a picture of the artist. So they had broken up, and Craig needed a California creative director, because we talked about this before. There was a lot of animosity between Los Angeles and New York, country mouse, city mouse. And it was really kind of, if you came out from New York in the music business, you were really sort of shunned on. You really were, because there was this, we're Californians, you're a big city slicker coming out here and trying to change the way we do business, and that's not going to happen. So there was that to overlook. So he needed a Los Angeles creative director, because I was destined to go back to New York and work in the New York office. So I was no big thing for him. He said, "That's okay, I've already replaced you." Okay, so I said, "Okay, great," and I left. And then Tony went into the meeting, and Tony, he had promised Tony percentages of the company, and it was just, he gave him finally an agreement that was about that thick, and all these clauses where if Tony was sick for more than 3 days or 4 days in a row, he would lose his percentage. It would go back to great. It was all this. It was really not good for any of us. So he said, "I'm leaving too." So that was at the end of December. And we didn't even get a Christmas bonus, but we didn't care. Tony had rented a one-bedroom cottage up on Ivar and Vine in the Hollywood Hills near Capitol Records. He was living there so that Bonnie, because Craig wouldn't pay for a separate place for Bonnie and I to live. That's why he put Tony and I together. But by this time, Tony and I had really bonded, and Bonnie came out to Los Angeles. She was in San Jose with her folks and my folks. And, we were both going to go back to New York together. She ended up coming out to Los Angeles and living with me in the house that Tony rented. Or first in the condo that Craig had leased, so that Tony was, and that lasted about a month. Then Tony, Bonnie and I moved in the day we quit. We had already moved into the place with Tony. And so the three of us were living in this small cottage, and that became our headquarters for Pacific Ioneer. In January 1, 1972, we started the company. And a couple of days later, news travels very fast.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of had an inclination that I was unhappy at Craig's. That's why they reached out to me, as well as they needed somebody. They didn't know. They were both from Chicago. They didn't know anybody in Los Angeles. So hiring me would be the perfect move, because not only did I grow up in California, I didn't really know a whole lot of people here, but I was meeting people, and people were coming to show their portfolios. My job was to set up an art department and do whatever work we ended up getting, that Tony ended up getting, which was none, because all the work that was promised never materialized. So that's when I shared the comps with Tony. And that was before we decided we were both still going to stay at Craig Braun. And he went out and sold these two packages, and now they're under Craig's, name. And so we had to walk away. He had to walk away from that. It was hard for him because he had a great relationship with Craig for years. He had worked for Craig Braun years before I got there. And it was hard for me because I had to walk away from getting any kind of credit for the, Schools Out or Big Bamboo. And along with the Rolling Stones tongue and other stuff, Frida Payne, other albums that I had done, I could get no credit for because it was all under Craig Braun. So it was hard to walk away from that. But what made it easier was the bonding that Tony and I had made, and the realization that we were what each of us had been looking for. That was the missing link. And for me, that was everything. And for him, it was too. I mean, we bonded. We were like brothers. And Craig couldn't believe that we both left. We started Pacific Ioneer. A few days after we started, Pacific Ioneer, we get a call from Lou Gordon and Murray Gordon and Lou Garlick. Those two men owned Ivy Hill. Ivy Hill was the largest printer in the United States. They had three locations across from the north to the east and in between. They had three huge printing facilities, and that made them very desirable by record companies that needed releases released and albums done. And, they couldn't work with, AGI was in Chicago. Bertco was in Los Angeles. Ivy Hill was in three locations: Long Island, New York, California, and Terre Haute, I think, or it was somewhere in the middle. And so it really was smart of Craig to join an alliance with them. But that alliance and that friendship had deteriorated greatly over the Rolling Stones package. There was some issues with the construction of it, and Craig blamed it all on Ivy Hill. Ivy Hill blamed it all on Craig, and the record company didn't care. They just wanted it made right. So there was this desire to get back at Craig that Lou Garlick and Murray Gordon had. We get a call from them. Come out, we want to have a talk with you and Tony. They were at the Beverly Hills Hotel. They had a cabana by the pool. And so we show up on a Saturday, and this is before we started Pacific Pioneer. And they had heard, because Tony was really good friends with a guy named Rusty Muir, who was running the Los Angeles Ivy Hill. And he was their top sales guy. He was running, and he was also married to Murray Gordon's daughter. Okay, so, and Tony and he had really bonded, and Tony had shared a lot of our frustration and stuff with him. And so they knew that we were going to leave, and they knew that I was going to go. They didn't know that we were going to join Pacific Pioneer, but they wanted to talk to us. So we show up on a Saturday. They were there at the cabana by the pool. And, it's great. You're at the Beverly Hills Hotel by the pool with all the movie stars and stuff. And so they started talking to us about how, they really were looking for an association with someone that would be better fit for them than Craig. Their alliance was really unshredded. It was on a thin line, and they knew who I was and what I did. I would go out to press checks. I knew those guys as well. So they wanted to see if we would be interested. And Tony had shared with them, by this point, they knew we were going to start Pacific Pioneer. So they said, look, we'll help you start Pacific Pioneer, because all we did was, there was three of us. Lou Morris was our third partner, stayed in New York. He was the New York office, and he bought all the production from Craig. He bought all the printing. So he knew these guys at Ivy Hill. He knew all of them. So not only did I leave with Craig's top salesman, but I left with the guy that was buying all his production. So that's why I don't get a Christmas card from Craig, okay, every year. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter, because it worked out great. And these guys said, look, we need an alliance with someone that we can enjoy working with. You guys are great. We know you're talking about starting a company. How about we help you out? How about you do work that on board packaging like you're doing at Craig's, and we'll do the printing, and we'll help you every month with money for a year. Okay, because like I said, Lou, I, and Tony had $2,500 each. So that's not a whole lot of money to start a new company with three partners. And luckily, Lou was working out of his house. Tony and I were working out of this small house that he had rented. And so we didn't have a whole lot of overhead, except for the fact that all three of us took a major salary cut. Both Tony and Lou and I were making good money, but we gave it up because it wasn't about the money. Pacific Pioneer was never about the money. It was really about the work and the pride that we took in what we did. And Ivy Hill saw that. Lou Garlick and Maury Gordon saw that. They saw that in Tony. They came to find it in me as well, which was really great. And so we partnered with them. They helped us for a whole year. And a couple days after that, I get a call from Dick Block.
I was wondering what happened with Dick.
Hey, what happened? We showed you a facility. You said you were thinking about it. And, what happened? We were really counting on you. And I said, you know what, Dick? I owe you one. Now we're even. I owed you one, or you owed me one. Now we're even. I'm starting Pacific Pioneer, and Tony and I are partnering, and that's it. That's the last time I talked to him. They were out in LA for about a year or two, and then they ended up going back to Chicago. They couldn't compete. They couldn't compete. How do you compete with a giant like Ivy Hill? You really can't. And the record companies love them, okay, because they could fulfill the orders on time, on schedule, on price, and we did a lot of work together for that year. And then even after that year was up and we weren't getting a monthly check from them, and it was all above board. There was nothing secretive about it. We did the work. They paid us for the work. And the work that we did was, hey, here's an album cover that only can be printed by Ivy Hill. And we're talking to the groups, we're talking to the art directors that we were dealing with. And Ivy Hill should really be the printer for this. And like I said before, the musicians had the right to decide. And, we could influence the musicians. And it wasn't like we were deceiving them. It wasn't like we were making a ton of money if they went the way we wanted. What ended up, the perk for us was it solidified our relationship with the musicians and it got them a great finished product. The work that we did was excellent for them. And that's why a lot of these guys kept coming back. That's why we've done so many iconic album covers over the course. And like I said, even after that year had expired, we were still doing a lot of work with Ivy Hill. We weren't getting any money for it, but what we were getting on the other end was the relationship with the musicians was great. So it was kind of funny how it all ended up. And then after 14 and a half years, and Tony and I broke up, and he went back to New York. And guess who he went to work for?
This has
Ivy,
been Ivy Hill.
Ivy Hill. Him and Craig both. Craig and he got back together. This is after 14 and a half years. He and Craig got back together in New York, and they both went back to work for Ivy Hill, selling. So, I mean, and I ended up starting couple more companies. And then about 15 years ago, I decided I don't need, I was always under the impression that I needed someone to handle the business end of it. All that time, I had the best person in the whole world and didn't understand it. It was Bonnie. Bonnie worked with us the whole time at Pacific Pioneer. She was our accountant. She handled the business. So when Tony started stealing money from the company, she found out right away. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back after 14 and a half years with us. But I thought it strange how both of them went back to work for Ivy Hill. And Ivy Hill took them back.
Oh, well, what a crazy journey.
I know. It's, and again, it all started with this, and it's funny because I never got to meet anybody except Dick Block and Jim Ladwick, as opposed to Pacific Pioneer, where I met a lot of artists. I met Isaac Hayes a few years later when we did Save the Children for Motown. Isaac was one of the performers on that concert for Save the Children. And so I was able to go backstage, meet a lot of the artists, and Isaac Hayes was one of, because for me, he was amazing. I mean, he was like Barry White. I mean, he was just such soulful, such power in his voice, such emotion evoked with what he sang. I mean, it was Isaac Hayes and what a nice guy, what a nice person, and I had told him about this happening. He had no idea because, I mean, he wasn't dealing with AGI. He was dealing with the record company. The record company was dealing with AGI. He loved the package. He loved the cross. He thought this was really great, but he didn't know that this was where it started. And he didn't know who Dick Block was or Jim Ladwick or AGI. He just knew the record company. And that's how it all came around. But, it's so funny because years later I was able to meet him and talk about this. And it's happened a lot. It's happened a lot with a lot of the musicians that I did stuff for. And again, what a weird thing to come all the way around. It came like full circle.
It's so true, and I think the silver lining is getting to meet Isaac and being able to tell him. I read
Yeah.
he was a very spiritual man, a very
Yes.
important part of the Stax record legacy.
Yeah.
I loved his work, Hot Buttered Soul and the
Oh
Black
yeah.
Moses LP. Great
Yeah.
songs on there. And
Yeah.
Isaac, just a great songwriter too. Isaac
Yeah.
and
And
David Porter.
composer and musician. I mean, he was in all of it. And he was also the chef on South Park.
See that I didn't know that
Oh yeah, he was. You ever watch South Park?
just bits and pieces of
Okay,
it.
chef who was, the chef. He was in the school cafeteria. He was the chef, Isaac Hayes, and he would always interact with the kids. And he was chef. His voice was chef on South Park. So he's, like Avery Shriver, the Frito Bandito. All this stuff kind of gets crazy, and it all kind of connects. And Joyce, that's again, I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank our neighbors here on the block for making what we do, especially you, but my little segment is so important to me, and it's become, I guess, it's become quite a thing for the block party, and I
It's just
love it.
it's
I look
just
forward to Saturday night, even though there's only 3 days in the week. For me, it's trash night on Thursday night to take the garbage out, Friday to record these things, and then it's Sunday, and then it starts all over again. But definitely the block party and Ernie's Corner is a real highlight in my life. And I thank you so much. God bless you and all our neighbors. And the neighbors keep getting more and more. They're joining in. They're loving the show. I can't tell you how much emails I get and people making comments on when we post the show on Facebook. I mean, we're a lot of them are in the thousand. A lot of them are in the 800s. I mean, when it started out, it was like maybe 100. We were lucky, and now we get over 100 every day, new views. I mean, and all that is it's not coming from an egotistical standpoint from me. I know it's not coming from you. It's just that it's knowing that what we're putting out there, people are liking. And I'm able to, the same way you educate, listeners and neighbors on the music you're playing and who went where and who did this and they did that. And I'm doing the same kind of thing with the album covers. I'm connecting dots, and you're adding so much to that, because otherwise it's just me going on and on. But what you add to it, is so important. And our relationship, you and my relationship, it's a great partnership, and I look forward to it every week. And again, we're almost at the apex of what we've got to be talking and what's coming in the future, all the cutting room floor pieces. I mean, this could have almost been a cutting room floor, but it was used. This became this, and that became this. So it was used. And like I said, it was one of the ones that I was considering for on the cutting room floor. But after the free to paint thing and AHEI and Craig Braun and the printing and the packaging, it all just sort of seemed like it was something that needed to be talked about for people that love Jesus Christ Superstar and Black Moses. This album was very important to him. You had indicated that too, what you were saying. It was very indicated. It was very important to him. And he was just a wonderful person. And, I was very, very lucky to meet him, and very, very lucky to do the Save the Children album that he was over the moon when I talked to him about that, because he really liked the way that came out with all the little kids and I mean, it was very cool. It was very, very cool.
Oh, it is. And the one thing, Ernie, that there's a lot of our art students, or even someone who wants to start up a business, they really learn a lot from your journey, that there's a lot of craziness on the way,
Yeah.
and you can really sell out very easy. And
Oh,
then
it's
you can
easy to
get
quit.
taken advantage of too.
Yeah, well, it goes along with what we were talking about a few weeks ago about never giving up and wanting to keep on making history instead of becoming it. It's very, very easy to become history. Really easy. All you have to do is one thing that people know. I've done hundreds, and I'm not done yet. I feel like like I said before, I look in the mirror. I'm 79. I look in the mirror and I see a 28-year-old guy that's full of piss and vinegar that wants to get out there and just crush everything. And finding you and the block party has made that even more real in my life. And God bless you and our neighbors. And now I think that I see that smile on your face where you're thinking about the music.
That sinister smile is
That
right
smile,
there.
that smile. Um, I think if it's okay with you, we could pick one from each of the two.
Hey,
Okay.
let me hear him.
Well, okay. My first thought was obviously on the Jesus Christ Superstar. Let me go back here. On Jesus Christ Superstar, I've said it over and over again. I don't know how to love him. Yvonne Elliman was just such a great cut. But because we've already talked about that, I think the other thing that the other music song, I liked them all, but the other one that I really liked was Everything's All Right. Everything's All Right.
Oh my, Ernie, that was my choice
Was it?
too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, there we go. We're doing that mindset, mind meld. So yeah, it would be, I don't know how to love him, but over that, because we've already done, I don't know how to love him. And Yvonne did a great job on that. Everything's all right is, I mean, I remember that song, Yvonne's song was amazing. But when I went to the first live performance at St. Peter's Cathedral, and I'm sitting with Tim Rice, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Bill Levy and Bonnie and I, we're all sitting up in the balcony looking down at the production. And that song came on, and it was just, oh my God, this is just amazing. So that one would be mine. On the Black Moses album, um, I um, I think that the Jerry Butler song that he covers on that with A Brand New Me is a great cut, and that's a Jerry Butler cover. And then he had his own song called Man's Temptation, which would have been my second choice. So either one of those two. I mean, did you have a thought on the Black Moses album?
I love the way he does now. You know, the thing with Isaac, and this is kind of the same as with Ruth Copeland, he did covers, but he really made it his
Made him
own,
in,
and
yeah.
especially a Burt Bacharach, Cal David tune.
Yes,
It
yeah,
is really hard to make those your own, but I love the way. Now, this is not a Bacharach David tune, but Never Can Say Goodbye. I
yeah.
like the way Isaac does that.
Yes. Again, it's
It's
like
that
Barry White.
smooth,
Barry White
smooth.
had that ability to take and do a cover, but make it totally his. And then his own songs were amazing. Yeah, that is a great choice. So, you've got your work cut out for you is to pick which ones you want to play.
I tell you, the Crushers are crushing
Yeah,
it.
crush it. We are. And thank all our neighbors. And again, as I look down the block, I see there's still some open space for new neighbors to join us. And I hope they will. And I get the feeling that they are just by the views that I'm getting and that you're getting on Facebook. That's just one part of it. There's a whole nother piece of that Jack's doing, that your people are doing, that people are already love your show. And, hopefully they like Ernie's Corner too. So thank you so much, Joyce, for making this possible.